Folks who live in apartments and condominiums may think their gardening is limited to something like this window box, but that doesn't have to be true. Look at this little condominium garden. It mixes flowers and vegetables together in a very tight space to form a garden that's both productive and beautiful. Some people call this edible landscaping, and you'll learn how it can work for you today on The Joy of Gardening. It's hard to believe that this is the lush garden you saw just a moment ago, but it is. Hi, I'm Dave Schaefer, your host for The Joy of Gardening. More and more people are taking advantage of condominium living, but that doesn't mean you have to give up having a garden that will provide some vegetables for the table and some flowers for the spirit. This small space is the only space the owner of this unit has available. There are 100 more just like it in this complex. Today, Mark Hebert is going to show us how to turn a space like this into a compact garden, a place the owner will enjoy spending time and harvesting vegetables for the table. Mark, how are you going to turn this weed patch into a beautiful garden?
Well, Dave, it really won't be that hard. A lot of people have small spaces just like this and can't decide what to do with them. Well, I've combined vegetable gardening and landscaping, and the results are beautiful and delicious. A garden design depends on your taste and where you live. Now, I've made a quick sketch of the area in front, and I've drawn in the things that I intend to plant. I chose a planting of evergreens and flowers for the corner to provide a handsome, maintenance-free backdrop. Along the south fence, some leafy, shade-tolerant vegetables and flowers. And along the curve, a wide variety of garden vegetables. The center features a small bird bath surrounded by clusters of herbs and flowers. A pebble pathway provides informal, maintenance-free access. My plan is in order. I've assembled all the tools, seeds, and plants that I need, so let's get going. I'm going to start here in the corner with this dwarf Alberta spruce. I think the color and shape of these trees is interesting. They're slow growers, so that with just an occasional shearing, they'll maintain their compact, conical shape for a long time. Whenever you're planting any tree or shrub, success begins with the planting hole. Make it large, at least twice as large, in fact, as the container or root ball, and deeper. Mix the soil from the hole with some form of organic material, peat moss, compost, composted manure. This loosens and aerates the soil in the root zone, so newly developing roots can expand more easily. Set the shrub in the hole and put a layer of this amended soil in the bottom of the hole to bring the top of the root ball even with the ground level. A shovelful of organic material for every 3 of soil is a good proportion. This will give the tree a chance to get established. Nice, loose, healthy soil for the roots to expand into. Framing makes the roots come in good contact with the soil. Now, create a basin to trap water by compacting the soil around the stem. Water transports the nutrients to the newly planted shrub, so it's important to provide a steady supply. The mugo pines will be planted the same way. Evergreens, flowering, and edible shrubs, they all appreciate the same care in planting. Now, I'm going to mulch this area with a good thick layer of shredded bark. Now, bark isn't the only mulch material. There were bags of marble chips, washed pebbles, and ground cocoa shells at the nursery. You can use whatever fits your personal tastes and your pocketbook. Mulch helps conserve moisture, and it also holds down weeds and makes an attractive setting for the shrubs. I'm going to lay out my vegetable and flower beds along the fences. Earlier, I spread the leftover soil from the shrubs I planted on the beds and added a couple of bags of composted cow manure. And now, I'm turning it all under. This loosens and aerates the soil, and the cow manure provides organic matter and a dose of essential nutrients. So I finished preparing the beds along the fence and a small area in the center. Now it's time to get some vegetables growing. I'll begin my planting with a variety of transplants. They not only give me a head start on harvest time, but also some immediate visual enjoyment. I'll start with my taller plants first, here along the fence, and here's the tallest. Tomatoes. Now I always plant my tomatoes in a trench. Just open one up like this. I find that my tomatoes grow better for me this way. You can use a trowel if you want to, but I like to use my hands. Now comes the shocker. I'm going to take my transplant and snip off all the leaves, right up to the top cluster. Now this sure looks like a lot less of a transplant, but believe me, it'll catch up quickly. Now I lay the plant in the trench. Cover the roots a little here, but the secret is right here. The stem is close to the surface, and that's where the warmest soil is, and tomato plants love heat. Now I cover it up, and this whole buried stem will become one giant root system supporting just this small top, and it'll grow very quickly. Now I want to protect this stem with a cutworm collar. Now that's just a piece of ordinary black and white newsprint wrapped around the neck of the plant. That keeps those hungry cutworms from gnawing it off. As the plant matures, the stem will toughen and resist cutworms on its own, and the cutworm collar will just decompose harmlessly into the soil. The best time to stake your tomato plants is when you put them in. That way I don't chop the roots off later on. This stake is made of metal tubing with a tough plastic coating. They're lightweight, strong, and attractive. As the plant grows, I'll tie it to the stake for good support. This first tomato plant is right in the center of the northern fence, and I'm going to flank it with the royal fruit, eggplant. This variety is called Black Beauty, and as the glossy, deep purple fruits mature, I think you'll agree it's an accurate description. Here's how I plant them. Just make a hole and set the transplants in just slightly deeper than they grew in the flat. When you're transplanting, work quickly, because exposure to the air will kill a lot of the tiny roots that extract moisture and food from the soil. So the quicker you work, the better. Now, don't forget the cutworm collar, because these work great protecting your plant from cutworms on almost all your transplants. And now, some peppers. And I'm planting two varieties. These sweet-tasting Keystone, a crisp bell-type pepper, and jalapeno, the familiar hot variety. A lot of people don't realize just how beautiful pepper plants are. Now, these will give me a variety of colors and flavors. Transplant peppers just as you would eggplant. They're botanical cousins, and they appreciate the same growing conditions. And don't forget that cutworm collar. How about head lettuce? It's tasty and attractive, too. I'm going to plant a cluster of a variety called Great Lakes right here. I'm going to set them in the soil, just about 8 or 10 inches apart. This Great Lakes has always been a very dependable producer for me, and it forms a loose but very tasty head. All you have to do is water them often. In fact, you should water all your transplants well, and then watch them grow. So now I've started my planting. I'll add 2 more tomato plants, more eggplant, and peppers. And in the front, I'll finish my head lettuce and add some onion sets in the middle, and then a few cabbage plants. Then make sure you give them all plenty of water. Now that I've got my northern fence planted, what about this one? It's a different story because the crops that will grow here will spend much of their time in the shade, but I've planned accordingly. I'm going to sow my fast-growing, shade-tolerant leafy vegetables in 3 long bands. Along the fence, I'll plant chard in 2 different colors. I'll broadcast these green Ford-hook giant seeds in a narrow band about halfway down the fence. Then I'll switch to ruby red chard, colorful and delicious. In the middle here, I'm going to plant 3 varieties of leaf lettuce: ruby, royal oak leaf, and salad bowl. Now here's a tip. I put my seeds in a shaker, actually a discarded garlic powder bottle. Since the seeds are so small, this makes a great seeder. A dash of ruby here, salad bowl there, and just a touch of royal oak leaf. Wait till you see how this turns out. And here, all along the front, a multi-planting. Everything all mixed up in the same row. In this shaker, I've got lettuce, carrot, and radish seeds. I just sprinkled them up and down this section of row, like salt and pepper. I apply a lot of seeds now, and I'll thin later. Then I firm them in by lightly tamping with my hand. Finally, I'll push in some onion sets, right along with the seeds. They'll all come up together. When you're through planting each band of seeds, cover them with soil, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. Firm them again, water well, and you'll be harvesting great salad greens in no time. Well, that takes care of the fences, but what about this open area in the center? Well, this little spot is perfect for something every cook should be familiar with: herbs. Again, I'll be using transplants because most herbs are so hardy they can be transplanted easily and successfully. You'll remember that here in the middle, I've got a small bird bath planned, and out from the base, I'm going to draw some spokes. These are my planting areas, and they form sort of loose triangles. In this one, I'm going to plant parsley. I'll just dig 3 holes. Now, 3 doesn't sound like a lot, but parsley grows quickly and really fills in. Take the plants, tuck them in, and don't forget to water them well. I'll plant sage, thyme, basil, chives, and oregano to complete my small herb garden. It's been about a month since I planted this condominium garden, and my friends who live here have done a little weeding and watering, and we've added a couple things to sort of spruce it up. The finishing touches, you might say. Beautiful, isn't it? And all my plants are doing just fine. Now, besides this bird bath, there are just 2 things we've added to make this garden look like this. The first is this border. To provide a barrier between the pathway and the growing beds, I've installed some of this vinyl edging. It's easy. Just use a spade or a shovel and dig a shallow groove and push the edging into it. This takes just a minute, and it makes a neat and attractive border. I've also added a good layer of these washed pebbles to keep down weeds and to provide an attractive walkway. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Your choice of walkway material will depend on what you like, but I think a light color really sets off the garden. Now, let's take a look over here. Remember that multi-row? It's doing just great. There's lettuce and carrots and onions. Whenever you need anything for a salad, it's right here, ready to pick. And finally, here's the best part. Now, the harvest from this small garden may not win any ribbons at the county fair, but it will provide fresh vegetables for lots of meals. And it's right outside your door. I think you'll agree that this small area is both beautiful and productive, proof that nearly everyone can experience the joy of gardening.
Some folks may think they've missed out on the joy of gardening because they don't have the gardening space, or any space at all. Well, we have good news for you, even if you live in an apartment. It's called container gardening. And if you love the taste of fresh vegetables, no matter where you live, you're about to find out how easy it can be. In fact, Mark Hebert, our gardening expert, says you may already know more about it than you think you do.
If you've ever tended a house plant or raised your own vegetable transplants, you already know quite a bit about container gardening. Plants aren't fussy about where they grow, as long as they're provided with what they need. Let's start with the one vegetable that almost every gardener loves to grow and eat fresh, the tomato. Tomatoes will thrive and grow to full maturity in containers. But remember, you're controlling the environment. You want to give your plants all the moisture and nutrients it would have in the garden. A successful container garden starts where any garden starts, with the soil. But container gardeners have a choice. You can use a commercial potting soil or just plain old topsoil. Now, I'm using a commercial mix, but whatever you choose, you're going to have to add some fertilizer to make sure your plants have all the nutrients that high-yielding vegetables need. I've already added some to my soil mix. Now, I've chosen these pixie tomatoes because they're a determinate variety. That means they'll grow to a predetermined height and then stop. They're well adapted to container gardening. You can pick any variety that you please, but remember, the larger, indeterminate varieties are going to require a bigger container. I'm using a wooden one about 10 inches across for this pixie. But you can use a clay pot, a plastic pail, a bushel basket, or whatever you have around. Fill the container with soil to within an inch or so from the top. These plants are about 8 weeks old, perfect size for transplanting. Now take the plant and pick off all the leaves, right up to the very top cluster. You may think you're hurting this plant, but you're not. You're actually giving it extra root power. All this area along the buried stem will become roots. Set the plant in the container as deep as possible and firm it in. And now it's time to water, and that's your primary job in container growing, because in the garden, just the surface area is exposed to the drying effects of sun and wind. But in a container, there's more area exposed. That means more evaporation. So this plant's going to be really thirsty. Some containers may even need daily watering. And don't forget, you're going to need to feed your plants. So use a water-soluble fertilizer and feed as you water. Remember, you're going to have delicious, fresh vegetables right at your fingertips. So don't let them dry out. A window box is another great way to grow vegetables in a container. In fact, you can have a full-fledged vegetable garden right outside your door. How much handier could it be? All vegetable plants need sun, the more the better. So your choice of location is important. Also, make it easy on yourself to reach, tend, and harvest your plants. These lettuce and onion plants are doing pretty nicely. You'll notice they're planted close together. You've got to make the most of the available space, but there's a more important reason. These close-fitting plants create this shade, a living mulch, and help keep the soil cool and moist. In a few minutes, I'll show you some bigger vegetables in full production. I think you'll be amazed at what you can grow in containers, indoors or out. If you want a conversation piece, plus a lot of good eating, how about growing some potatoes in a bushel basket? This basket works like any other container, except I'm going to line it with a plastic bag to hold in moisture so it won't dry out so quickly. And don't forget to tear a few drainage holes in the bottom. Drainage is important in all your containers. I'm adding a layer of crushed stone, but you can use gravel or any coarse material for drainage. Why? Well, plants need plenty of water, as I've said, but too much water will suffocate their roots. Good drainage lets excess water pass through. To fertilize, I like to add a good layer of compost, but if you can't get it, use a good commercial fertilizer. Then, make sure you cover it with soil. Now add your potato seed pieces. You can even use old sprouted potatoes that you bought at the supermarket, and cover them with about 4 more inches of soil. Then firm, and be sure to give it a good drink of water. As potatoes grow, tubers form along the buried stem above the seed piece. As the plants get bigger, I add more soil. Bury them right up until I have a little hill of potatoes right in this basket. Same as in the garden. So don't let lack of land hold you back from enjoying fresh vegetables, no matter where you live. Look at my containers hard at work here. I've got tomatoes, honeydew melon, a good crop of peppers, sweet potatoes, a whole salad garden in a tub, I've even got alpine strawberries growing in this pot. Who says you need a lot of land to enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables? There are some vegetable varieties that are especially suited to container growing. These are Tiny Tim tomatoes. They're an example of midget vegetables, small vegetables growing on small plants. In addition, there are full-size vegetables on dwarf plants. These are bushwhopper cucumbers. Check your favorite seed catalog for their recommended container varieties. Of course, most full-size vegetables, like these California Wonder Peppers, will do just fine too. I prefer the full-size vegetables. The plants are larger, and I get more to harvest. The blossoms on this eggplant tell me that it's just about time for it to set fruit, and now's the perfect time to give it an extra boost. Watering with a soluble fertilizer will ensure this plant gets all the nutrients that it needs. Containers can be as varied as your imagination. This pyramid style, like a wedding cake, really takes advantage of space. The plants grow up in tiers instead of out. It's a great way to grow a lot in a little space, and I think it's attractive too. While you're making your rounds, don't forget to rob an occasional potato. Taking a few out once in a while won't hurt the plant a bit. In fact, it'll give the others that are left more room to expand into. You'll be amazed at the harvest you'll get from just one container. But just look at this. This is my patio pepper patch. I've got a whole garden's worth of peppers right here in this tub. Over here, I've got Oratani bell peppers. And over here, I've got hot Portugals. And up front, two more varieties, sweet cherries and hot cherries. 4 varieties. As you can see, peppers are the perfect plants for pots on your patio. But what about cole crops? The plants can take up quite a bit of room, but look at this. 5 heads of crisp cabbage. Broccoli? Harvest the heads when they're this size and enjoy tender side shoots later on. And look at this. Snow white cauliflower. Delicious, raw, served with your favorite dip. You can even grow your favorite squashes in containers. These two are doing just fine. Look at the fruit set on this summer squash. They're the perfect size for eating. And here's zucchini. I don't like to let mine get any bigger than this. They're tender and more flavorful at this size, and by harvesting now, you'll encourage the plant to produce more. And how about winter squash? I've got 2 varieties growing right here. This one's a new one for me called Jersey Golden Acorn. I can't wait to try it. But over here is an old favorite, Gold Nugget. It's delicious. You'll notice both of these grow in bush form, which makes them ideal for container growing. One of the best things about container gardening is the plants are portable. When the season ends outside, bring them inside. A south-facing window like this will keep this Tiny Tim tomato producing for months. So, if you're short on space or you don't have any land, I hope you feel inspired. Container gardening is easy, enjoyable, and it really works.
Recognize this? It's the inside of a chimney. These are chimney tiles. They come in a couple of different sizes, and they're made from the same thing that flower pots are made from, terracotta. Quite often they get cracked or chipped in shipment, and they can't be sold by the building supply house. So so they wind up being tossed aside in the back of the yard. That means you can get them for little cost or nothing at all, and they make a great small space garden. For example, a kitchen door herb garden or something near a patio. Let me show you what I mean. First, dig a hole with a couple of different levels in it. I already have dug one here, and then place the tiles in whatever pattern pleases you. Usually, folks put the tallest, biggest ones near the back, smaller ones near the front. Now, you could also use this idea for a low privacy wall along the edge of a patio, for example. Another advantage is that if you have a plant that gets out of control, like mint in an herb garden, this will keep it right where you want it, right inside its container. There. See, these are just balancing themselves off. It's very rough and very free-form, and you may have to jiggle them around a little bit, pack a little dirt around to level them off. There, that's all there is to it. Now, fill these in with the excess dirt that you have, and this is a perfect time to improve any problem soil. You can add peat moss or a little cow manure, whatever your plants will need. Next, I'm going to fill this in with some tall plants that will go along the back and along the edges to frame it, and some shorter hanging plants that will be inside the tiles themselves. Then I'll just water it and watch it grow. Before long, your plants will expand into their new space and create a beautiful display. This is a terrific idea for a small space like a patio or for a problem area with poor soil. And best of all, the materials will cost you little or nothing at all.
Solve the case of creeping cucumbers. Hi, I'm Dick Raymond. Controlling cucumbers in a small space is no mystery. Grow them on a trellis. Cucumber vines like to spread out 5 or 6 feet in all directions. So the trick in a small garden is to get them to grow up on a trellis. I use some chicken wire and sturdy posts to make my trellises. This trellis is rugged. It can handle the weight of many cucumbers, plus it lasts for years. Notice, I've set the trellis in the soil at an angle. This makes it easy for plants to get started up the wire, and it also protects them from hard winds. Be sure to set your trellis so that the prevailing winds push the plants toward the trellis, not away from it. In most parts of the country, put it on the east side. I plant the cucumber seeds about 2 to 3 inches from the trellis. Plant a seed every 5 or 6 inches and cover it with about 1 inch of soil. As the plant grows, it will send out runners. And if the runners don't find the trellis at first, help them out and coax them up the fence. Pretty soon, the trellis will be loaded with cukes. Help yourself. The more you pick, the more you get. With a space-saving trellis like this, you can solve any case of cucumber sprawl.